If you've ever loved an avoidant, the most painful part isn't even the day they leave. It's what happens after, when they're gone but they're still living inside your mind. Your body keeps reaching for them out of habit. Your brain keeps searching for the missing piece, the explanation that would make the story make sense. You wake up and check your phone like it holds the answer to your worth. You read old messages like they're evidence. You replay conversations, you imagine what you should have said differently. You picture them moving on, and every picture feels like a punch. And the worst part is that none of this feels like choice. It feels like gravity. That's why this keynote matters so much, because it names the real wound. It's not only heartbreak, it's the unfinished loop. Avoidant dynamics rarely end cleanly. They end with ambiguity, mixed signals, quiet exits, and half-closures that keep your nervous system suspended. They don't always give you the respectful clarity that allows your mind to shut the door and heal. They give you just enough warmth, just enough meaning, just enough history, that your heart keeps believing there's something unresolved that needs to be completed. And as long as your heart believes the story is unfinished, you keep watching the door, you keep waiting, you keep hoping. That waiting becomes its own form of attachment. So when you say, "I'm going to show you what actually makes them miss and value you," you're speaking directly to the thing the viewer is silently begging for, to stop feeling invisible, to stop feeling replaceable, to stop feeling like they were nothing to someone they gave everything to. Because the question under all questions isn't, how do I get them back? It's, did I matter? Am I valuable? Did they feel anything real? And those questions can eat a person alive when the other person left without giving a clear answer. But here's the deeper truth that changes everything. In avoidant relationships, you can matter deeply and still not be treated consistently. You can be loved and still not be chosen. That sounds cruel, but it's actually liberating, because it means you can stop measuring your worth by their ability to show up. Avoidant patterns are not a measure of your value. They are a measure of someone's capacity. And capacity is what the viewer needs to learn to focus on, because value is not proven by intensity, it's proven by behavior. The reason this keynote grabs attention is because it starts where their heart is already stuck, inside the mental replay, inside the obsession, inside the silent question, do they miss me? And it gently redirects them from the fantasy of being missed to the reality of being valued. Because missing is an emotion. Valuing is a choice. Missing can happen in loneliness, nostalgia, ego, or late-night regret. Valuing shows up as consistency, repair, accountability, and real effort over time. So this keynote sets up the most important distinction of the entire video. Being on someone's mind is not the same as being protected in their life. An avoidant can think about you and still avoid you. They can miss you and still keep distance. They can crave your comfort and still resist responsibility. That's why viewers stay trapped, because they are chasing proof of feeling. And feeling is the easiest thing for an avoidant to have privately without changing anything publicly. Now let's talk about why they stay in your mind, because that's where the pain becomes clear. They stay in your mind because your nervous system got trained by inconsistency. When love is stable, you relax. When love is unpredictable, you obsess. Your brain starts scanning for patterns because it's trying to regain control and safety. That's why you can't stop thinking about them, not because they were perfect, but because the bond never felt finished. The warmth came in bursts, the distance came without warning, the return came just when you were starting to heal. And that push-pull teaches your body to stay alert. It becomes a loop of stress and relief feels like love because it ends the stress. So the viewer is not crazy. They're conditioned. They're experiencing a nervous system response to unpredictability. And when you name that, you give them dignity again. You give them the feeling of being understood. Because they've been told they're overthinking, too sensitive, too emotional. But what they're actually doing is responding normally to an unstable attachment. Now here's where the keynote becomes powerful, because it doesn't just empathize, it promises transformation. It says, today you're not just going to feel seen, you're going to learn the one thing that changes how an avoidant experiences you. And the shift is this: avoidants don't start valuing you when you chase them harder. They start valuing you when your presence stops being free and your absence becomes real, when your energy is no longer available to be managed, when your standards stay standing, when you stop offering full access without responsibility. But before you even get there, the first keynote has one job: to make the viewer feel, this is about me. It's to put language to their private pain, the pain of being left with questions, the pain of still being haunted by someone who seems calm, the pain of wondering if they mattered. And once you hit that emotional nerve, they'll stay, because now they're not just watching a video, they're watching the possibility of closure. Stay with me, because this second keynote is where you break the biggest illusion that keeps people trapped. The illusion that if you just try harder, love harder, communicate better, or send the perfect message, an avoidant will finally get it and become consistent. That belief feels hopeful, but it quietly destroys your power because it puts the entire outcome in your hands, and then you start treating every moment of distance like a test you must pass. You start thinking, if I say it wrong, they'll disappear. If I ask for too much, they'll pull away. If I'm too emotional, I'll push them. If I'm too quiet, they'll forget me. And that mental state is not love, it's performance. The truth is, what makes an avoidant miss and value you is usually the opposite of what your instincts want to do. Your instincts say, chase the connection, restore closeness, get reassurance, fix the tension immediately. But an avoidant nervous system often experiences pursuit as pressure. They can feel your urgency even when your words are gentle. They can feel the expectation under the question, the fear under the message, the need under the calm tone. And when they feel that, their system reaches for the one strategy it trusts: distance. So if you keep trying harder, you may get small bursts of closeness, but you won't get stability. You'll get moments. You'll get relief. You'll get a temporary return. And then you'll get the same pattern again. Because the core issue was never your effort. It was their capacity to tolerate intimacy with responsibility. This keynote matters because it tells the viewer something they've been desperate to hear, but afraid to accept. You cannot text someone into emotional maturity. You cannot love someone into consistency. You cannot be so understanding that it cures their fear of closeness. You can be supportive, yes. You can be kind, yes. You can communicate well, yes. But if someone's nervous system equates closeness with threat, your perfect behavior won't stop the trigger. It will only delay it. And delaying it is what creates the illusion that you're almost there. That if you just do one more thing, you'll unlock the secure version of them. This is why the second keynote keeps people watching, because it challenges the fantasy without shaming them for having it. It says, I know what you've been doing. I know why you've been doing it. You were trying to protect the bond. You were trying to be safe. You were trying to be the exception. And it also says, here's the pivot that actually changes the dynamic. The pivot is understanding that avoidants value what requires responsibility to access. They don't value what is always available no matter how they behave. When your presence is unconditional to the point of self-abandonment, it stops feeling like a choice they must protect and starts feeling like a resource they can dip into. They can pull away, come back, pull away again, and they never have to face real consequence, because you keep reopening the door to full closeness without repair. And that's not your fault. It's what happens when love is mixed with anxiety. You accept the smallest signs of connection as proof that the bigger connection still exists. So the second keynote is telling the viewer, stop trying to win their heart through accessibility. Stop trying to prove your worth by being endlessly available. Because endless availability does not create value in an avoidant nervous system. It can actually create complacency. It tells them, I can disappear and still have access. I can withdraw and still be welcomed back. I don't have to change because they will adapt. And when someone can keep you without holding you, they don't develop the urgency to protect you. This is where you deliver the surprising truth that hooks people deeply. Avoidants often attach more strongly when your energy becomes unavailable to the pattern, not unavailable to love, unavailable to the cycle. When you stop making their distance the center of your day. When you stop reacting to silence like it's an emergency. When you stop filling the gaps with paragraphs. When you stop giving emotional access as a response to their withdrawal. Because then their nervous system experiences something it rarely has to face, the reality that their choices have consequences. And the moment consequences arrive, the avoidant mind starts doing what it avoided doing before, reflecting. Not always in a mature way at first. Sometimes it starts as ego. Are they done? Did I lose control? Are they moving on? But even that is the beginning of missing. Missing often begins as discomfort, not romance. It begins as the absence becoming real. It begins as your attention no longer being a guarantee. So the second keynote isn't telling the viewer to play games. It's telling them to stop playing the one game they've been unknowingly playing. The game where they chase stability by offering more of themselves. Because what actually creates value is when access to you is connected to behavior, not punishment behavior. Consistency earns consistency. Communication earns closeness. Repair earns renewed trust. And when you live by that, you stop trying to force someone to value you. You simply become someone whose presence is experienced as a privilege, not a guarantee. This keynote keeps people watching because it flips their entire strategy. It tells them, the magic isn't in a message, it's in a shift, and once you understand the shift, you'll never beg for someone to see your value again. Here's the hard truth. When you give full access to someone who gives partial presence, you teach them they can keep you without truly holding you. And that's why they don't miss you deeply. They might think about you, yes. They might feel a pang of nostalgia, yes. They might even crave your comfort when they're lonely. But missing you in a way that leads to value, in a way that leads to real effort, requires one thing that your over-giving accidentally removes: the feeling that access to you is earned through responsibility. Most people don't realize they're doing this because it doesn't feel like over-giving. It feels like love. It feels like loyalty. It feels like being supportive. You tell yourself, if I'm steady, if I'm patient, if I don't pressure them, if I keep the door open, they'll feel safe and they'll come closer. And that sounds logical in a healthy relationship. But with avoidant patterns, it often backfires because your steadiness becomes their safety net, not their motivation to grow. Think about what full access looks like. Full access means you respond quickly even after they ignored you. Full access means you offer warmth even when they haven't repaired what they broke. Full access means you keep giving emotional intimacy, reassurance, care, attention, and availability even when their presence is inconsistent. Full access means when they disappear, you don't hold a boundary, you hold the relationship alone. And when they return, you treat the return like a victory instead of a test. And here's why this matters: because the avoidant nervous system is built around one priority: control through distance. Distance is how they regulate discomfort. So if they can get the benefits of connection while still regulating through withdrawal, they have no urgent reason to change. They can stay in their comfort zone and still keep you emotionally invested. That's what partial presence does. It gives you just enough to stay, and it gives them just enough to not feel fully responsible. This is where your viewers' heartbreak lives. They remember the good moments, the closeness, the intimacy, the way it felt when the avoidant was present. And they keep trying to recreate that presence by giving more, by being better, by being easier, by being less demanding, by proving they're safe. But what they're really doing is lowering the cost of inconsistency. They're making it easier for the avoidant to stay the same. Because value is not created by your suffering. Value is created by the connection between behavior and access. When someone learns that they can pull away and still have you, they stop fearing the loss of you. They stop protecting the bond. They might still like you, but they don't treat you like something they could lose. Because your availability has taught them the relationship will survive their absence. This is why so many people feel invisible in avoidant relationships. Not because they're not valuable, but because their value is being given away as a constant, not experienced as a choice. The avoidant doesn't feel the impact of their behavior, because you keep cushioning them from consequence. Their silence doesn't cost them connection, because you fill the gap. Their vagueness doesn't cost them clarity, because you become extra clear. Their inconsistency doesn't cost them trust, because you forgive quickly. So even if they do miss you, it's a shallow missing, a missing that doesn't require a change in them, because your continued access makes the bond feel permanent, even when they behave temporarily. Now here's where this keynote becomes empowering. The solution isn't to become cold. The solution isn't to punish. The solution isn't to play games. The solution is to stop giving relationship-level access to someone who isn't showing relationship-level responsibility. That's not cruelty, that's self-respect. Because when access is free, it becomes background. When access is connected to behavior, it becomes meaningful. This is where people misunderstand. Detachment. Detachment isn't disappearing to manipulate. Detachment is removing the emotional over-functioning that kept the pattern alive. It's you refusing to keep paying for inconsistency with your nervous system. It's you choosing to be warm, but not available for the cycle. It's you choosing to be kind, but not easily reset. It's you choosing to be open, but only in an environment where repair exists. And here's what happens when you make that shift. At first, the avoidant might feel relief, because your energy is no longer pressing toward them. But then the absence starts to feel different, because it's clean. It's not angry. It's not dramatic. It's not begging. It's simply you living your life without chasing them. And clean absence is what creates missing in an avoidant nervous system, because it removes the reassurance that you'll always be there no matter what. It removes the guarantee. And when the guarantee disappears, the mind starts noticing what it took for granted. That's when their thoughts start circling. That's when the curiosity starts. That's when the discomfort begins. Not always romantic at first, but real. And if they have any capacity, that discomfort can push them toward reflection, toward action, toward repair. But even if it doesn't, you still win. Because you're no longer giving your full self to someone who only offers you partial presence. Because here's the final truth inside this keynote. If someone only values you when you're slipping away, then your value was never seen. It was only felt through loss. And you deserve a love that values you in presence, not only in absence. But watch what happens when you stop feeding the pattern, when you stop chasing, stop over-explaining, stop treating their silence like an emergency. Their distance stops feeling like relief and starts feeling like consequence. This is the fourth keynote, and it's the moment the whole dynamic flips, not because you're punishing them, not because you're playing games, but because you finally remove the fuel that kept their avoidance comfortable. For an avoidant, distance is not just behavior, it's regulation. It's how their nervous system calms itself when intimacy feels like pressure. When closeness rises, when emotions rise, when your need for clarity rises, their body can interpret that as threat, and threat triggers retreat. So they pull away to breathe. In the old pattern, the moment they pulled away, you chased. You sent the extra message. You tried to smooth it over. You explained your feelings more gently. You offered reassurance. You became the bridge that kept the connection alive. And that did two things at once. It soothed your anxiety by creating contact, and it soothed their discomfort by proving they could withdraw without real loss. So their distance worked for them. It gave them relief. It gave them control. It let them avoid discomfort while still keeping access to you. But when you stop feeding the pattern, the distance stops working the same way. Now there's no chase to cushion them, no paragraphs to soften the silence, no emotional proof that you're still orbiting. Your calm creates a clean gap, and that clean gap is what turns their distance into consequence. At first, this feels terrifying to you, because your nervous system has been trained to panic when connection is threatened. You've been trained to interpret silence as danger. So not chasing feels like you're losing. It feels like you're doing nothing. It feels like you're letting them win. But what you're actually doing is refusing to participate in a dynamic that required your anxiety to survive. You're reclaiming your energy from the cycle. And here is what the viewer needs to understand. The moment you stop chasing, you stop making their avoidance the center of your life. That alone changes everything. Because in the old pattern, they could pull away and still be the emotional center, because your mind kept them there. Your thoughts, your messages, your worry, your patience, your hope, all of it kept the connection alive. Even in absence, they still had access to your nervous system. And that is why they didn't miss you deeply. They never fully lost you. When you stop feeding the pattern, they finally experience something new, the absence of your emotional labor. Your silence isn't an emotional performance. It isn't anger, it isn't begging, it isn't a test. It's simply the absence of you carrying the bond alone. And because it's clean, it's loud. This is why calm detachment hits avoidance harder than drama. Drama still gives them engagement. Drama gives them a story. Drama gives them a reason to justify distance. This is why I need space, they're too much. Drama still keeps you emotionally attached. But calm detachment removes that script. Calm detachment doesn't give them a villain. It doesn't give them chaos to blame. It doesn't give them an emotional hook to pull you back and forth. It just shows them reality. You are not available for inconsistency anymore. So their nervous system goes through a predictable sequence. First, relief. The pressure drops. They tell themselves it's fine. They distract. They get busy. But then the quiet starts to change. Because without your pursuit, distance doesn't just calm them. It creates a question. Are they done? Did I push too far? Why aren't they reaching? Why does this feel different? And now, for the first time, their withdrawal is not producing control, it's producing uncertainty. And uncertainty is what you've been living in. It's what has been torturing you. But for them, uncertainty is what begins to wake them up, because now they can't rely on your chasing to keep the bond intact. They have to face the possibility that their pattern actually costs them something. This is where missing can begin. Not romantic missing at first, but nervous system missing. Missing as in, I can't feel them there anymore. Missing as in, I don't have access. Missing as in, I can't press the button and get the same response. Because when you stop feeding the pattern, you stop being predictable in the way that made them comfortable. You stop being the guarantee, and this is where a lot of people make the mistake. The avoidant might reappear with a small reach, a hey, a like, a casual message. That's often not a return to repair. It's a return to test the old lever. They're checking if your calm is real. They're checking if you're still available to be pulled back into the same loop. And if you collapse instantly, if you reward the reach with full access, you teach them that even your detachment was temporary, that the pattern is still alive. But if you stay steady, kind but clear, your calm becomes a boundary. You don't punish, you simply require responsibility. You don't argue, you simply refuse resets without repair. And that's when the relationship either evolves or reveals itself. Because a person who truly values you will not just want your attention back. They will want to repair what broke it. They will be willing to do the uncomfortable thing, acknowledge the distance, validate the impact, and offer a plan for consistency. So the fourth keynote is the moment you stop letting their distance regulate you. You stop chasing relief. You choose self-respect. And in doing that, you turn their favorite tool, withdrawal, into a mirror they can't ignore, because for the first time, distance doesn't soothe them, it costs them. This is the part that shocks people. Avoidance can handle reactions, even anger, but calm detachment removes their control lever, and that's when emptiness turns into regret. The fifth keynote is not about being cold, it's about being unhooked. It's the moment you stop giving your nervous system away as proof of love, and you start letting reality do the speaking. Because the most misunderstood thing about avoidant dynamics is this: your biggest emotional reactions often do not create change, they create familiarity. They create a script the avoidant already knows how to handle. When you get angry, when you cry, when you send paragraphs, when you demand closure, when you block and unblock, when you leave dramatically, it feels like power to you, because you're finally expressing what you've been holding in. But to an avoidant, that intensity can feel like something they can categorize, manage, and survive. It's emotional weather. They can wait it out. They can shut down. They can label you as too much. They can retreat and let time do the work. And here's the key: even if they feel hurt, your reaction still confirms one critical thing. They still have access to your emotional system. Your love is still wrapped around them. They still matter enough to move you. That's why avoidants often don't fear your anger as much as you think. Anger still bonds you. Anger still says, I care. Anger still keeps the connection alive because you're still engaged. Even your pain can become a kind of currency in the dynamic because it keeps them at the center of your attention. Calm detachment is different. Calm detachment doesn't give them a script. Calm detachment doesn't give them drama to blame. Calm detachment doesn't give them a reason to justify their withdrawal. It doesn't even give them the comfort of knowing you're still emotionally waiting. It's quiet, but it's heavy, because it removes the lever they've been unconsciously using to regulate themselves, the lever of distance. Distance works for an avoidant when distance triggers pursuit. If they pull back and you chase, they get relief and reassurance at the same time. Relief because the closeness pressure drops, and reassurance because your chase proves they haven't lost you. That combination is addictive for them too. They get to feel free and important simultaneously. But calm detachment breaks that arrangement. Now they pull back, and instead of pursuit, they get silence. Not punitive silence, clean silence. Silence that says your life is moving, your energy is protected, and the relationship is not being carried by you alone. In the beginning, calm detachment feels like nothing is happening. Your mind will scream, say something. Your body will crave contact. You'll feel the urge to check, to fix, to soothe. And this is where most people fail, because they mistake discomfort for danger. But that discomfort is actually the withdrawal symptoms of a pattern you've been trapped in. Your nervous system has been conditioned to regulate through their responses. So when you stop chasing, it feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar can feel scary even when it's healthy. Now here's what happens on the avoidant side, and this is why the keynote matters. At first, they often feel relief because the pressure is gone. They tell themselves it's fine. They distract. They get busy. They lean on independence. But then, without the chase, the distance feels different. The relationship isn't floating in the background anymore. They can't sense you reaching. They can't feel you waiting. They can't rely on your emotional energy to keep the bond alive. And that's when emptiness arrives. Emptiness is the one thing avoidants try to outrun, because emptiness forces reflection. Emptiness forces them to feel the consequence of their pattern. And when they finally feel that emptiness, it starts turning into questions. Why aren't they reaching out? Are they done? Did I lose them? What did I just throw away? That's where missing begins, not as romance, as impact. The impact of your absence being real, not dramatic, not chaotic, just real. This is why calm detachment can create more value than any message you could send. Because value is created when something is no longer guaranteed. When your presence was constant, they could take it for granted. When your presence becomes conditional on respect, it becomes meaningful. And this is the part people don't understand. You're not making yourself scarce to manipulate. You're making yourself unavailable to a pattern that devalues you. You're teaching your own nervous system to stop paying for inconsistency with obsession. Now, the fifth keynote also comes with a warning, because calm detachment can cause hovering. The avoidant might come back with a small reach, just enough to test the waters. And if you respond with instant full access, you erase the consequence. You teach them that even when you detach, you'll return to the old version of you. So the power of calm detachment is not just in the silence, it's in what you require when they reappear. Because regret is not the same as growth. Missing is not the same as maturity. An avoidant can feel the emptiness and still try to soothe it without changing. They can miss you and still want you on their terms. They can value the comfort you gave them and still avoid the responsibility that real love requires. That's why calm detachment must be paired with standards. Standards that say, I'm not here for resets, I'm here for repair. I'm not here for breadcrumbs, I'm here for consistency. I'm not here to be managed by distance. I'm here to be chosen with presence. This keynote shocks people because it flips the power back into your hands without you needing to fight. You don't need to convince them. You don't need to chase. You don't need to perform pain. You simply stop being available for the cycle, and in that stillness, emptiness becomes the teacher. And if they are capable, it becomes the doorway to real reflection. And if they're not capable, your calm still saves you, because you're no longer feeding a pattern that was starving your peace. In the final part, I'll give you the one calm question that exposes everything the moment they return, whether they're coming back for real growth and repair, or just relief and comfort. Because the most dangerous moment in an avoidant dynamic is not the breakup, it's the re-entry. It's the moment they reappear after silence, after distance, after making you doubt yourself, and your heart lights up like you've been underwater and someone finally opened the surface. You feel relief before you feel logic. Your body relaxes before your mind catches up. And if you're not careful, that relief will make you hand them the same access that kept the cycle alive in the first place. Avoidants rarely come back with a full return at first. They hover. They poke the door. They send something small. Hey, how are you? A meme, a like, a quick comment, a late-night message that feels intimate but avoids responsibility. It's just enough to create hope. Just enough to trigger your nervous system. Just enough to test whether you're still available. And that's the key word, available. They're not always testing love. They're testing access. They're checking if the old version of you still exists, the version that responds quickly, forgives fast, explains everything, and accepts a reset without repair. This is why so many people get trapped again. They think the return means something has changed. They treat contact like commitment. They treat attention like effort. They treat a warm message like a plan. But contact is easy. Contact can happen when they feel lonely, guilty, bored, stressed, nostalgic, or simply uncomfortable in the emptiness your calm created. Contact can happen without maturity. Repair cannot. Repair requires emotional responsibility, and emotional responsibility is the thing avoidant patterns often struggle with most. So your job in this keynote is not to be cold, it's to be clean. Clean means you don't punish. Clean means you don't chase. Clean means you don't collapse. Clean means you move with self-respect. You can be warm, but you do not reward a return that has no accountability. You do not hand over full access to someone who has not shown they can hold it. And this is where the one calm question becomes your power. What will you do differently next time you feel overwhelmed and want to pull away? That's it. One sentence, no speech, no accusation, no emotional debate. One sentence that forces reality to show itself. Because if someone is coming back for growth, they will not fear that question. They will understand why you're asking. They may feel uncomfortable, yes, but they will lean in. They will take ownership. They will validate your experience. They will talk about a plan. A plan, not a promise. A promise sounds like, I'll do better. A plan sounds like, if I need space, I will tell you clearly. I won't disappear. I'll say I'm overwhelmed, I'll ask for a day to reset, and I'll set a specific time to talk again. I understand silence hurts you, and I'm not going to do that. That's repair language. That's responsibility. Now watch what happens when someone is returning for relief, not growth. They avoid the question. They get irritated, they minimize. Why are you making it serious? I just needed space. They flip it on you. You're overthinking. They try to keep it light. They try to move straight into comfort without addressing the pattern that hurt you. And if you accept that, you're not reconnecting, you're restarting. You're teaching them again that they can disappear, return, and regain full access without paying the price of accountability. This keynote is about a hard truth people need to hear. Not every return is a reunion, many returns are tests. Tests to see if you're still attached. Tests to see if your standards have softened. Tests to see if your life is still paused. And the only way to pass that test is not to prove you're loving, it's to prove you're stable. Not stable in the sense of pretending you're fine. Stable in the sense of being anchored in your standards. Because standards are what create safety. If you have no standards around communication, repair, and consistency, then the relationship will always default back to the avoidance comfort zone, closeness when it feels good, distance when it feels hard, and a reset when they feel lonely. That is not love you can build a life on. That is a pattern that keeps you emotionally hungry. So when they return, you don't rush to fix it. You slow it down. You make space for truth. You let their response to that one question tell you everything. And you don't just listen to their words. You watch their behavior in the days that follow. Do they communicate proactively or only when they want comfort? Do they stay consistent or do they vanish again the moment it's inconvenient? Do they follow through or do they make excuses? Because the point of the question is not to trap them, it's to reveal capacity. And here's the most empowering part of this keynote. Whatever their answer is, you win. If they show capacity, you have something real to build with. If they show avoidance, you just saved yourself months of confusion. You just saved your nervous system from another cycle. You just protected your peace. Because the goal is not to make them come back. The goal is to stop accepting returns that cost you your self-respect. The goal is to stop mistaking relief for love. The goal is to become the kind of person whose presence is not free, not because you're hard, but because you are valuable, and value requires responsibility to access.